have this budget, we have these resources. What are we going to do with it? And back in, the 1800s, we made fry bread, right? We came up with that. Fast forward to today, how are we going to balance these things out and do it in a good way? And I think, women are the backbone to creating those solutions. That's not to say that men aren't inspired just as much or they don't have their part, but yeah, I really think that women and the help that women bring to their relationships and the work that they do really speaks towards all of these things, towards nation building, and then of course these career goals. So yeah. Moving on, I also asked about cultural goals, so things like speaking your native language, or breaking it down. I say speaking your native language, of course, that's at the center of so much of what we want, who we want to be, who we want to become. Diane Williams, she's a Keres language teacher and Indigenous studies teacher at Bernalillo High School, and that really is the essence of our culture. But at the same time, our access to resources of native language learning and native knowledge, it can vary. So like for me, I don't speak my native language yet, but creating little goals along the way, like being able to say my clan, that's a goal of itself, in and of itself, and that's what I share with my students. It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all goal, but at least create little goals along the way of what you want to strive towards. So a lot of them talked about, well, I want to learn this from my family, or I want to learn this from college, to be able to pass this on towards the kids. And then going back to our fashion show example, the student said, fashion, there's tradition and prayer behind fashion. There's always a prayer behind it. So just thinking about when we get dressed for our day, we think about things to a certain extent, but if we're getting dressed for a ceremony or maybe for a graduation, then we really, really do, think about what that means. I know with my chair, when I graduated with my PhD, Glenaba, she wore her white manta, and she didn't wear the cap and gown whatsoever. She wanted to represent her indigeneity 100% on my behalf, and so I think that speaks towards the power of fashion and how we express ourselves, how we dress ourselves. So I asked the students, name your core values. What are they? And by naming those core values, then you're really able to more freely practice and engage in your own Indigenous education pathway. So you see the bullet points of those core values they came up with. And one piece I wanted to share with you, and this quote comes from Vernon Caillou when he took some classes here at NAS. I didn't include the slide, but I should have, but he did say, what I learned from Geneva Vicenti's class is she brought in Larry Emerson, and he said, we're all elders in training, and that was his Indigenous education core value. And he also talked about, how we live our lives and what we put out into this world. He said, if it doesn't come back to you, it will come back to your bloodline. And what the really beautiful thing about that is, 2 weeks ago, I mentioned Daphne came to talk to my class, and she told a story about how, that essentially her grandpa taught her the same thing, that when they dance, in these spaces, they don't ask for money in return. They're doing it on behalf of future generations, that goodwill is going to come back to their future generations. And it's not even, for personal karma, but it's for karma, to your bloodline in the future. So just jumping down to the bottom of this quote, my core values remind me that everything I am learning is so that I can use the knowledge to help others. They remind me that I want change for myself and other natives so that the statistics, stereotypes, racism can be minimized. Another quote, tradition is using prayer to get through your day easily, and that everything goes well for me on my way to and from class and while in class. I see these core values relating to nation building because with each day I make sure they all intertwine with each other's. So the point I really want to make here is, what Governor Teller was saying, we need critical thinking. Because if we don't have critical thinking, we don't have critical consciousness, that just leaves us open to thinking in the way that, the Bilaganas want us to think. And then that, probably would lead to largely self-destruction, at least historically. That's been the intent. But if we identify our core values, then we're stronger in our grounding and in our critical thinking and in where we want to move toward. So I'm going to move into the last third of my presentation, but I have a time check. 4:35? Okay. So officially I should be done about now. But I'm going to go on for like 10 more minutes. So, the world we're living in right now, it's pretty scary. We want to say, that politics, that's white people stuff, let's not worry about it. But I kind of want to worry about it when this guy has, access to nuclear warfare, right? We want to worry about it when he has access to our budgets that could make or break our dinner table or an education. And so I think, now's the time that people are kind of like paying attention a little bit more than normal to really insert ourselves and our experience with race and racism and colonization into the national narrative and, and take advantage of that, hit while the attention is really can be upon us. So recently, or about a year ago now, I joined the New Mexico ACLU board, and then I started doing presentations for this Catholic foundation called The Better Way. And it's interesting because of what I shared with you. Like, I didn't want to swear that oath earlier, but now I'm joining the ACLU to preserve American core values, and presenting to the Better Way Foundation, which is a Catholic foundation where Catholicism doesn't have the best history in this area. But why would I do that? And that's kind of what I want to share with you now. But in terms of this quote, we will continue to outlive any racial remarks that are said against our nation. Can anyone identify who said that quote? Yeah. So it is Russell Gay. His slide will come up in a minute, but leading up to the Russell Gay quote, I wanted to share with you, what sparked that quote from Russell Gay. So here on campus, when I first started as a student back in 2004, there was what we referred to as the duck pond incident, where a Bilagana student was in math class. He came out and unplugged the microphone and stereo equipment of a Native event that was occurring, a Native rap concert. And as he walked away, he said, "That's why we put you fucking monkeys on reservations." And so, that was a really bad incident, right? And the UNM response to that was extremely delayed. So that brought a lot of attention to hate speech on campus. But I wanted to break down, that sentiment, because it was shocking at the time. Today, it might not be as shocking because, people are given more permission to think that way. People talk that way on, the comments on newspaper articles, right? But looking at race and colonization, So for one thing, we're racialized. You know, we're taught that we're subhuman. So we're called things like monkeys, or are the R word. I'll just say it, redskins. And then at the same time, we're colonized through this idea of reservations, right? So it's both a race thing and a colonization thing, which speaks to the basic tenet that Brian Brayboy talks about. So anyways, fast forward to now, we've got Donald Trump saying, you know, oh, turning Pocahontas into a racial slur. And then, you know, even in his history, saying they don't look like Indians to me, so, you know, he thinks he's the expert on Indians, you know, in one way or another, like a lot of people do. You know, Indians live in teepees, Indians ride horses. If you don't do that, then, you know, how can you call yourself an Indian? But that's really, you know, that thinking is very much not an evolved level of thinking. So what is our response? And it's that, you know, we're going to outlive you, essentially. You can establish this government, you can destroy your own government, but we're going to outlive you. And say what you will about, you know, the politics of any of our leaders. I really like that quote. You know, I just thought it just spoke to the power of our resiliency. And then he spoke to Andrew Jackson, you know, how that portrait was hanging in the background that time that Trump was addressing the co-talkers. And so in regards to Andrew Jackson, Russell Begay said, we survived him, and Native Americans will survive every president from here on into the future. So the blue, that's nation building. And that's kind of what my latest work has been on is, you know, integrating this idea of critical race theory, tribal crit, and nation building, and thinking about how does it all really work together. One more response I'll share. This was said at the ASA conference last month at good old ASU. Michael Yellowbird said, Trump needs a 365-day treatment by a medicine person. You know, so it's through our own eyes that we need to see the world. So Brayboy connects this larger dialogue of critical race theory with tribal crit, and so it's things like understanding the pure monetary gain aspect of it, racialization, and also stories. So that aligns us with other people of color, other people who have experienced oppression through racism. And then we've got what I call is the nation building orientation tools in the tenets he names. He talks a lot about nation building, but not necessarily in that one article, you know, the tribal crit article. But I wanted to pull it out a little bit more and say, you know, he might not name nation building, but it's there. You know, it's working towards social change, it's tribal sovereignty, it's our beliefs, it's all those things. So I just wanted to bring that out. And I asked this question a while ago. So, you know, how do we employ this? More attention is being regarded towards Native experiences. And I think what we need to do is share our theories from our positions of power, whether that power be, you know, what I'm doing right now, or your power in tribal council, or your power as an elder, your power in the state, whatever your position is, you know, we all come from positions of power, even though it might not be recognized as such by the Western measures. So I mentioned before, I've been working with like the New Mexico ACLU and with the Catholic Foundation. And what I shared with them is, you know, understand our history, understand our values, take NAS courses, don't work on short-term solutions, work on sustainability, and think about how our values align. So things like love for children, equality, you know, that's not just something that Native people believe in. A lot of, you know, anyone who's a good person, you know, would think think would believe in that. And I believe there's a lot of goodness outside of our Native communities, obviously. And then looking at Native people not as, we need to save them, but we can partner with them and we can build relationships with them and think about them in the long term, nurture them, formalize them. And when I talked to that Catholic Foundation, I told them, do things like stand up for human rights with no DAPL, divest from Wells Fargo. And I thought that was a normal thing to say, but my friend who brought me in to speak, he said, no, that was kind of a big push, for them to hear, for you to tell them you should divest. And so I thought, okay, well, I think there's a lot of room for growth in our relationships.